Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey folks, today we're going to take a look at Mega Man the board game from Jasco Games and of course licensed by Capcom. Now, Mega Man is one of my favorite video game series, at least when I was a kid anyways. Mega Man 2, I wore that sucker out. It was one of my favorite games growing up, possibly my favorite game of all time, and this game is definitely paying homage to those earlier games. So there's been a ton of Mega Man games. There's Mega Man X and Mega Man Legends. I actually liked all of those as well, but this is definitely based off of specifically Mega Man 1, where you are Mega Man himself, and you're going to each of the different stages, trying to defeat the boss of the stage, get their power, and then eventually fight Dr. Wily. But of course, to make this work in a competitive board game, this is not cooperative, there are many Mega Mans, and you're all going through the stages, and you're all trying to get the powers. And then after you get just a couple of them, you try and go and be the first one to take out Dr. Wily. Does this all work? There have been quite a lot of thoughts and things said about this game. Let me go ahead and give you my 2 cents. I'm going to give you a brief overview of how the game works. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Mega Man the board game is a competitive game for 2 to 6 players. Each player controls a different Mega Man, and your goal is to be the first to defeat the evil Dr. Wily. But to do that, you must first take out some of the robot masters that are under his control. The play area of Mega Man consists of a main central board, which is a path to Wily, and 6 small boards that attach to the main board, each of which is a different robot master stage. There are empty spaces for expansion content. A miniature representing Wily and the Robot Masters is placed on the last space of each of their respective stages, and each stage has a set of boss cards. These cards not only tell you how the boss reacts in combat, but they also tell you what special power you get when you defeat them. We'll get to those later. Another really tiny set of cards is placed next to every stage. These are challenge cards, and they represent the difficulties you'll have to face getting through each space on a stage. Every player is Mega Man. Take your miniature and place it on a stage of your choice in the first space. You also get a life counter with 2 spinners. You can keep track of your life and the life of a boss you happen to be facing. You also get a double-sided character card, one side for boss battles and one side for stage challenges. Every player has the same stats. Your health starts at 28, and you start with 3 energy cubes. Energy cubes can be used to re-roll dice. You also have 10 threats. This is how many dice you get to use for your entire turn. Every player has 3 lives. If you die, you lose a life. Your turn ends, and you'll respawn at full health in the same space next turn. But if you lose all of your lives, you must remove yourself from the board and respawn in a brand new stage next turn. Then you recharge everything to full, including your lives. Each side of the card gives you a special ability, usable only in challenges and boss battles respectively. The challenge ability lets you rearrange the top 2 cards of your deck. The boss battle ability simply lets you deal 2 damage with a hit on the dice, or spend an energy to play an extra card. Finally, speaking of that deck, each player has an identical deck of action cards, and will always have 4 in hand. You'll always draw back up to 4. Each card has a point cost, and there are 3 abilities on each card. The top ability can only be used during challenges, and include things like recharging your energy, switching dice results, or gaining extra threat, and therefore dice. The bottom ability is a Wily ability. When you're proceeding through a challenge, the other players can play Wily card abilities to foil you. There are things like preventing you from spending energy, giving the minions extra attack, or even letting the Wily player advance on their stages if you fail the challenge. The middle ability is only for boss battles. Also, each card has a special symbol which might match up to the different challenges. We'll get back to that in a minute. Determine turn order and begin. Each player's turn goes like this. First, you flip over a challenge card for the space that you're on. Each challenge card will have several stats that modify the challenge. First, in the top corner is a number. This number is how many points you or the collective Wily players can spend on action cards. Choose whether you're going to play one or not, and then the Wily players in order will determine if they're playing one or more cards, as long as they do not surpass the point cap. Second, there will be a minion icon. This will tell you what type and how many of a minion infest the stage. Each remaining minion at the end of a challenge deals damage to you, and they have special abilities. If the Wily players play the card with a symbol that matches the symbol on the challenge card, all of the minion special abilities will activate. You can destroy 1 minion per hit that you have remaining on the dice at the end of your turn. Some challenges will also have a special restriction as well, and a special effect that occurs if you roll and are forced to keep Wily heads on the dice. Lastly, each challenge card will tell you what you must roll in order to pass it. After playing your ability cards, gather your dice. You decide how many dice of the 10 that you will spend, but remember, these dice must last you until you decide to stop on the stage. You roll as many dice as you chose and spend energy if you want to reroll. For challenges, most of the faces of the dice just let you match the symbols that you need for the challenge. The Wily head will hurt you as described before, and the energy pellet will give you 2 hit points. After you finish rolling, compare. If you met the requirements on the challenge, you win, pass to the next space, and decide if you want to keep going or stop. If you fail, you just fail and wait for your next turn. Boss battles are different. When you get to the last space of a stage, you as Mega Man must fight. On your turn, you may use the middle ability of one card and then roll all of your threat, which now resets each round of combat. Only hits count, and each one knocks 2 life off of the boss. Each of the Wily players will take turns controlling the Robot Master in between Mega Man's turns. By rolling the Robot Master's threat, consulting the dice chart to see what the special abilities of this particular Robot Master are according to the dice faces, and then using whatever static special ability they happen to have. This keeps going back and forth until one side or the other is dead. If you win, you not only get the boss's special ability, which will deal extra damage to certain other bosses, but you also take his miniature as a trophy. This allows a one-time use effect to change the die to anything you like, and then it goes back to its spot where someone else might claim it. After you succeed, on the following turn, you choose a new stage to start at and do it all over again. If you've already defeated at least 2 Robot Masters, you're allowed to start on the Wily track and try to get to the end and defeat Wily to win the game first. Note that mixed into Wily's challenge cards are copy boss master battles. Rather than engage a challenge, you immediately fight a boss. If you win, you can take its power as normal if you don't already have it. There is a Yellow Devil space on the track. If you own that expansion, it's a special boss you must fight. Otherwise, it's just a normal challenge. Lastly, you get to Wily, who functions just like the other boss battles, except you must defeat him twice overall to finally win the game. And that's it. Whoever defeats Wily first is the winner. Let's get to my final thoughts. Well, I think it's safe to say that Mega Man the board game has been pretty controversial, as much as anything is controversial in the world of board gaming, which is not that big a deal. But I remember when it was first on Kickstarter, people were like, "This doesn't seem like it's actually like Mega Man at all," and why would you make a game like this? And are you really going to do it justice? People are always very hesitant when it comes to a beloved IP or license being used for anything, from like a movie being made into a video game to a video game being made into a board game. I can totally understand that. And here's what I'll go ahead and say. Despite all the many super negative reviews you might have read, I don't think this is a terrible game. I don't hate it, which is probably not a ringing endorsement. I think it's okay. I'm not keeping it in my collection, but it's not because I think it's a pile of garbage. If it was, I'd totally say that. Of course, it's kind of for better or worse for what I'm known for, but I think a game is crap. I actually think that what this game sets out to do is to get across the feeling of Mega Man as much as possible. That is a monumental feat, because the Mega Man games, at least the original ones, do not lend themselves to this at all. I could make an argument that perhaps this should have been a cooperative affair at least, or that you could do a really interesting one versus all game where several of the players are the Robot Masters and there's one player as Mega Man. That might make at least a little more thematic sense. I don't like the fact that, as the to quote Flip the Table, it has the Optimus Prime conundrum of multiple players controlling Mega Man without them even being different colors. But all of that being said, I think they did the best with the theme that they could, and the end result is a game that has a lot of very interesting things about it and some very fun things about it, but is killed by a couple of really critical issues, unfortunately. Not totally killed, though, for everyone, I'm sure. Just for people like me, I think. I think there is an audience for this game, and it's going to be the audience who is okay with really long games, because what else are you going to do with the rest of your night? In other words, people that don't have a whole stack of games they have to get through for the night, as many not only reviewers but compulsive board gamers feel compelled to do. And also people who like games like Munchkin. We'll get to all of that, but let's start with the components. I think the components of the game are solid for the most part. The miniatures are nice. I said before, I hate the fact that the Mega Man are the same color, but it really doesn't matter that much other than like an aesthetic and thematic thing, because you kind of know where you are. You're not going to be mixing them up very often. It's just not the kind of game where that's going to happen. They do come with like little decals. I didn't even bother to put them on because it doesn't matter. So that's not a huge deal. I think all the miniatures are solid, especially for board gaming miniatures. The board and the artwork are very bright and colorful, and it makes sense for the most part. I think the rules are okay, although it's just the wall of text style, which I find very aggravating, but everything seems very clear. The one huge pet peeve I have with the components are the tiny cards for the stages. So irritating. The challenge cards. They might be the tiniest cards I've ever seen for this type of game. And it's hard to see what the icons are. I think that the idea was, this is like a form and function type thing where they laid out how they want the board to look, and they're like, oh, there's not much space for the cards. Let's make them super tiny so they don't get in the way. You could have made them bigger, okay? I'm telling you, we would have been okay with that. So that's one thing that's a bit fiddly and obnoxious. But everything else kind of works. I mean, the dice look cool. I wish they were engraved as opposed to pad printed, because you know those are going to wear away over time. But not a huge complaint. You could probably buy extras. The theme, I said already, works well enough. I don't know what they could have done better given what they had to work with. So I was kind of happy with that. And I thought that some of the hallmarks of Mega Man are there, totally there. Getting the special powers, using them against the other bosses. Love that. That was the best thing about Mega Man, and that is here in spades. Going through the different challenges and the levels and all of the different, not the mini bosses, but just the minions that you have to fight, is all really cool in the final battle with Wily and going through, and then the bosses are back, again, just like Mega Man. So I love that they put those little things in there, and they work for the most part. So, what's the bad thing about this game? Like, what? I'll get that out of the way right now, because everything I just said is basically the best parts about it. The theme and how some of the different special attacks are worked out. And I even like the card system, the cards being used for different things. That's okay, because one major problem with this game could have been not letting the players do anything while someone's taking their turn. That would have absolutely killed this game. At least, while I'm not happy with the fact that the other players have to play the part of the Munchkin card playing bad guys, at least you have a chance to do something, and at least the system that they used was somewhat creative, of having the cards be double-sided, and therefore there's a hand management aspect of, oh, I don't really care about this card for Mega Man, but I might keep it for Wily. So that's an interesting aspect, at least. But ultimately, this game is killer in a couple different fronts. First and foremost, it's so completely and utterly random that, and it's just, it boggles the mind. And you can have a horribly, terrible, shitty game of this, while your partner, your neighbor next to you, who did nothing really that different than you as far as like decisions that he or she made, is having the best game of their life. And it comes down strictly and purely to dice rolls and luck of the draw. That is it. Doesn't matter if you're talking about the regular challenge levels or the boss battle levels, you can just get screwed. And that leads into the second problem with the game, which is the extreme length of this game, which, if you are de facto eliminated early by being totally hosed, can make this game feel interminable. I'll be very honest with you here. We did play through a whole game of Mega Man, but we did it by basically saying, oh, you have 2 powers, then we're just all going to sit back and help you go through the Wily, because we just want to see this end. And the first game of this we played, we did not finish. We were just like, you know what, let's come back to this, because we was already going on for 3 hours, and nobody had gotten to their second power yet. And you can call that first game-itis, that's fine. But this game, I think, can go up to 5 or 6 players. Well, is it 5 or 6? I'm sorry, I forget. It's 6 players. Don't do that. Don't do that. 4 is pushing it. 3 maybe. Even with being engaged on other players' turns, you're still an interminable amount of time before you're able to act as Mega Man again, which is the highlight of the game and giving you something to do. And getting through an entire stage feels like a whole game in and of itself. Then doing it again, then hoping that you're strong enough to go through Wily's thing, but knowing you probably should get more powers, but everyone wants it to end by that point. This is a 4 to 6 hour game for content that's really only worth about an hour to an hour and a half max. This is another reason why it's similar to Munchkin, not just to take that card aspect, but total randomness, but also the 1 hour of fun packed into 3 hours of fun, that kind of thing, or 20 minutes of fun packed into 2 hours in the case of Munchkin sometimes, which I just find incredibly obnoxious. And that, I think, really could have been fixed in a number of different ways. In a sense, this could have been reduced down to a much simpler dice-chucking game, almost King of Tokyo style, and still kept some of the theme of getting the special powers and moving on. I don't feel that there was this need to have these big, long stages for every single boss, thematic though it may be, but at least a way to get through them faster. This is definitely a game that has the content and thematic content for an hour game, but it just goes on and on and on and on and on. I cannot stress that enough. And that's why, for me, it's a deal breaker. That and the de facto player elimination due to pure random luck overshadows the cool aspects of going through the stages, fighting the bosses, which is cool, fighting the bosses, and getting the different powers. All of these things work pretty well, and then it just goes on and on and on. So if you're an extreme Mega Man fan and you don't care about the game length, or you're okay with home ruling it and just ending it early and not playing through the whole thing every single time, this is the game for you, because it really does feel like Mega Man in a lot of different ways. But if you're just a casual Mega Man fan and someone who just wants your games to move along and hates the randomness, can't recommend it. So I don't hate it. I like a lot about it. I want to love it. And I do recommend it for a very specific niche of people, but the rest of you should stay far, far away. That is Mega Man the board game from Jasco Games and Capcom. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.